Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today was born in Japan and traveled around the world and East Coast of the United States as a Navy brat. She grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, then traveled through Kentucky, Massachusetts, Georgia, and Florida before retiring from the world of physical therapy and turning to a second career in creative writing. She has successfully raised 4 wonderful kids who are presently out living their own adventures. She now lives in Florida with her husband and enjoys visiting with her 6 and counting grandkids, golfing, gardening, and of course, writing honest and heartfelt family stories. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Kyle Ann Robertson.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Kyle, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
My 4 kids. But in all honesty, I think back, especially when I knew of this question. One of the kids wanted to write a book years ago. I would have made it happen. So in thinking that way, I'm like, so why didn't I make it happen? And I've always believed that like time is the great equalizer. We all have the same 24 hours. It's how you choose to use those hours. So I might have been able to find time like in the car while I was waiting for the kids and things like that. But I also think brain capacity is an equalizer too. And I think that's where I don't think things could have been different. So it wasn't until I retired from physical therapy and we bought a lake house up in Georgia, and I found a bucket of all my writings from elementary school, middle school, high school, even into college, and little things that were published in the school papers and stuff like that. And I found a short story that I decided to make a novel out of. And I started taking classes at that point. So I don't think I could have done that until I had the time to think of me, which is kind of what I write about.
Well, that is a common occurrence, I think, of many of us who waited until retirement to write. My book could have been written 40 years ago. It's been in my head that long.
Exactly.
Well, your first book is fiction, but it does include a military brat, which is something you know a lot about.
I do. And I know it in 2 ways, traveling when I was younger, but then also not. My father got like 3 tours in Norfolk, Virginia. So that equals roughly could be 9 years, 9 or 10 years. So I was there from 2nd grade to 12th grade. And all my friends moved, even though I might not have, because he happened to do sea duty, shore duty, sea duty, but out in Norfolk. So part of that informs this book, how I didn't like I missed them. And so in my book, Julie, every time she lost an older sibling to a college and then they would move, that sibling stayed in the college town. So seeing empty bedrooms meant people weren't coming back to her. And that informs why when the book opens up, it's 19 months after the death of her son, which is not what the book's about, but it's about how that triggers everything else. And so she can't see this empty bedroom knowing that it wasn't going to be filled again. So she wants to turn it into the home office. And that's the kickoff for the book. So, and that is totally informed by me losing siblings and not losing them, but having the empty rooms. And then when my kids left, the empty rooms got me.
That's so true. And I just am so grateful to all of our military families because those of us who haven't been in the military don't understand, how strong these families have to be and how much loss there is and moving around. I know that's all from different perspectives. I'm sure that it makes many of you so much stronger. I stayed in the same small town my entire life, and I wanted to be the new kid in school. I wanted to move somewhere, but I wasn't allowed to.
Well, and exactly where the title came from, the white picket fence. Like and you'll read in the book, she marries Michael because her high school boyfriend joined the military. So she ended up marrying her best friend because she was not going to move. And Michael made sure she had that white picket fence. And guess what? That she's got a transient soul and didn't know it. So, that's and I think that happens to all of us. I don't believe that you realize it. It's not a conscious thing. So
Well, once you wrote this book, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to use a hybrid, a small press, or did you self publish?
I used a small press, and I love them, and I actually had given. This is actually the second book I wrote. The first book I wrote that I learned on and then rewrote. I had the publisher took both of them. They just chose to put this one out first, so the next one should come out soon. So I really worked a lot on looking for an agent with the first book, and it was interesting to me. Lots of nice people out there. I felt going to conferences was the best way because I wanted to see the personality of who I was applying to, as well as I wanted them to meet me because I don't want them to see a 60-year-old person on a piece of paper writing a story about moms and daughters. I want them to meet me. And I think that's important. And I got a lot of requests and a lot of, but what I started catching on, well, what didn't take much to catch on when somebody blatantly said it. I was told that nobody wants to read what I would have to say because it wasn't. Now, my stories are contemporary fiction. They're book club fiction. They're today's time. But I was told that I wasn't. There was nothing current, no current political thing, no current whatever going on in it. I'm not going to write that. I don't necessarily want to read that. So I have no problem not writing that book for you. Somebody else will gladly write it. When I started getting that feeling a lot of times, I thought, first of all of these 30-year-old agents that I'm asking to take my book started to click. There were a few older agents, but they were working with the names in the business. So as a new writer, it was hard to get to that person. And I felt like I was fighting this young industry for my stories. So a friend of mine recommended my book to her publisher. And so I kind of got it, not an easy in, but I still had to work for it and do all the work for it. And that's kind of how it happened. And no offense to you 30-year-olds. A lot of you are my friends and my helpers. I love you guys. I just do feel there's a different kind of mindset going on right now for us. For I write women's fiction, which they've ditched that term, so I don't know what I write, but I write contemporary book club, discussionable fiction.
Well, I think that publishers are not picking up on the fact that there are lots and lots of us over the age of 50 who are main audiences for many of these books. And it's the same thing when you're trying to look for an agent and they're looking at our ages and thinking we don't have many books left in us, but I'm interviewing people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who are still writing beautiful work. And so I think they're missing the boat if they don't pick up on more of these authors in this age group.
I agree. I have 4 novels finished. So hopefully this next one will come out in November. And then, that's an edit. And the other one is, I'm kind of revamping. The other one is completely outlined with most of the scenes. And then there's a fifth that's kind of, I'm working on. So
you are quite prolific. Tell us about your writing process. Do you write every day? Are you a morning person or a night person?
definitely a morning person. I shut down after 3 o'clock. I make all my appointments and do what I got to do after 3 o'clock. But I'm definitely a morning person. And I write right now. I'm in marketing mode, so I don't even. That's like a 24-hour job. I found out, so I can't wait till that dies down. But I definitely am more creative in the morning. I can edit later on, but I prefer morning. And how I do it is when I'm writing scenes. Sometimes the voice, I can read it and say, oh, she wouldn't have said that, and then I'll think, oh wait, but book number 4, she'd say this. So I grab that notebook. So like if it comes to, and I know this is a question that everyone always asks about writer's block. Um, do I have writer's block? Yes. I found out the first 7 years of my writing, I have writer's block, and I would solve it by taking another course because I didn't know what I didn't know, and maybe I could find something. Um, but I write. I like poetry, so sometimes I go into that mode. Or I go just pick up a different book. I am also doing a passion project, which is a fiction writer's aid, and it is to help us with the mucky middles. So hopefully that is going to all launch this fall. We'll see. But
Well, I think it's incredible that some of you can write so many novels at one time. I can barely keep up with the characters in one book at a time, and y'all are writing 3 or 4, and I don't know how
well,
you
I'm
do
not
it.
sure what's going on in our heads. Is that's a good thing?
Did writing that first book change the process of your writing? Did you get quicker? I mean, you have to have a certain formula for all of these books that you're writing.
well, I, I, I wish I did. I'm a Virgo, but I'm a pantser. But then I do outline after the fact, and a little ADD. So the Virgo kind of fights with the, So it's good that I have these things going for me. When I wrote the first book, I wrote that taking random classes and with Writers Digest University, which I love, and I got it together and queried and took classes and love it. I love it's coming out next. I love this book. But when I started to do like my creative writing certificate program and things like that, I didn't want to work on the book I already had. I wanted to write another book so that I could learn on it, because I already had all these preconceived notions for, you know, the first book. So I started writing White Picket Fences. At the time, because of this dichotomy of transient and locked in, the working title was The Wrong Battle. And I still love that working title because that's really, but the publisher felt it wasn't women's fiction title. So I understand that. If you have Kyle writing The Wrong Battle, you're going to be looking for something else. So that was a big lesson to learn. And also, White Picket Fences started out as a trilogy. And I wanted 3 women, one with a family, married with a family, one that had a stepchild, couldn't have children, and so it was an executive type mom, and one with a single mom with a daughter, and then all the daughters were all high school friends, and that's how they all got together. And so it was really fun knowing I was writing these characters because I could get more in depth in them. But as I started I finished White Picket Fence, and then when I started to work on the third book, which would have been the second book of this, I realized I didn't want to do the same timeline in the same location and pick up where I left off or try to. I realized I didn't want to do that. I wanted a different, so I completely changed the names and everything for number three. It's now number three. Um, and I have a new standalone book. So I know it's kind of like I'm compartmentalized along the way, but I hope I answered the question.
Yes, I understand that. And I know that we're supposed to have a series of at least three before we start really earning out any money. And I decided I would go back to the beginning. I wrote The Fifth Daughter of Thorn Ranch, a contemporary Western, and I thought I'd go all the way back to The First Daughter of Thorn Ranch and bring it forward. So I can understand not wanting to be in the same locale, but maybe in the same century. I'm not sure yet.
Oh yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
I moved her. This book's in near Wilmington, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and I ended up moving the other one to Virginia Beach because I know it well. So
What is the spark of inspiration for each book? Does something just come to you in the middle of the night? I hear writers who dream about their characters. What inspires you?
what inspires me is the question of, well, like every writer, what if? Um, and because I'm one of three daughters and I have three daughters, the whole thing of you can't blame your mother at this point because then they're going to blame you. So I kept thinking, and it is definitely a theme through all of my books. It's about family dynamics, that how we don't communicate or miscommunicate, and we misconstrue, and we miss all this stuff. And a lot of times in the name of love and protection, you tell these little white lies because you just don't want to go there or whatever reason, and how monumentous they can be later on in your life, and or how something can affect you later. So all of mine, that's what everything is. Everything I write about is this, and is it in my family? It is something I feel, yes, I received from my mom, that there was a lot of miscommunication in there. And yes, I try really hard to be clear and concise with my children so I don't have these, I'm not going to say abandonment feelings because it's not that strong. It's just that, God, if I only knew that, Mom, if you just explain that. And I know she feels that way about me. If I only understood that then, we wouldn't have done that. So that's what I write about.
Well, I find it so interesting, the push and pull of mothers and daughters, especially. Is such an interesting concept, and I have the same with my own mother, and then with my daughters, they will tell me a memory of childhood, and I'll think that never happened. Where are they getting that? So we just have such different perspectives, even if we grow up in the same house.
It's so true. And that just happened with me and my mom. I had made a comment on Facebook and then she corrected me on Facebook. And then my daughter jumped on me and said, "Why did she say that?" And I said, "You know what? That's her truth. I believe that's her truth. And this is my truth. And if my truth is wrong, it was based on her truth. So she started it." I don't know.
That's a great way to look at it. Well, you mentioned promotion, and I know that publicity is difficult for writers. They'd rather be writing than promoting themselves. Have you found anything that worked or that maybe didn't work?
Well, I am very blessed with three 20-year-old nieces. Very blessed. So and then my daughter has an online fitness business, and I borrowed her brand coordinator, and my three nieces, because they're all 22, 23, and I just farm stuff out. I have to do the content and, stuff like that, and explain, like, and I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, even for this, like, you don't, you just I'll get used to it. I'm going to get used to it. But so I get a lot of help as far as posting the social media stuff, and I booked a lot of events coming up, and I have wonderful friends that are hosting events for me. I'm just lucky. I think I'm lucky. So
Well, I know you mentioned some uh, classes that you took when you were learning the craft of writing. Are there any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups or conferences that you can share that improved your writing journey?
I have to give a shout out to WFWA, Women's Fiction Writing Association. They are just the resources, the camaraderie. I met my critique partner at a retreat in Albuquerque pre-COVID and found she lived 20 minutes from me in Georgia. But we met in Albuquerque because of this event. But I would also shout out Ann Garvin and Aaron Solello have the fifth semester. That probably was the first time I did a program and thought, okay. I mean, they kind of condense an MFA and we went to Chicago for the first week, 4 months of working with your mentor, and then we met in New York. I'm not sure how they're doing it now. That course gave me the reality of writing and what I was going to be in for. And I mean, I still have my board. So I'm showing you my board, but like that is exactly what has happened for me. So I was really thrilled with that program as a kickoff for me.
That's a great recommendation. I'm the coordinator for the Women's Fiction Writers Association Women's Fiction Day, which is always June the 8th.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of getting the word out there, even though they're considering what women's fiction and the title really means and how we go on from here. But it is a great organization.
I love it. I volunteer for them too, as far as their submissions for all of our platforms and stuff. So, yeah.
Well, Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the passages you've brought to share today and then read so that we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Okay. I'm not a great reader, but all right. I picked a chapter almost midway. It'll give you where she is in her life, I think. So I'm going to set it up with her husband came home. Julie's husband came home early evening, late afternoon, and told her they had a dinner at the CEO's house. He works for an insurance company. And it was like in 3 hours. And Julie's like, okay, I have to feed the girls. I have to get them to dance class. I have to find them a ride home. I have to get ready myself. And he's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And he leaves. So that's the setup. The one good thing about being late for dinner at the CEO's house was I got to park my faded blue family van with its dented fender in front of a stranger's house down the street at the end of the row of the Range Rovers and Bentleys. On my way up the long driveway to the front door of the small mansion, I passed by Michael's white Audi in the driveway. He must have been one of the first to arrive. The dinner went as expected. The food superb, the men ignored the women, and the women got drunk on Prosecco. I was not cut out to be a corporate wife. First of all, I preferred Cabernet. I didn't care if it stained my teeth. If I were going to consume the calories, then I damn well would drink what I liked. Secondly, the other women didn't work at all. They had nannies and housekeepers, gardeners, and personal shoppers. I did all that, plus chauffeur. I had absolutely nothing in common with these women, except what assholes our husbands could be. But I was not about to admit that to these perfect strangers. Who knew what they'd hold against me, or Michael for that matter? I just smiled when they smiled and laughed when they laughed, taking note of how commendable Michael seemed compared to their husband's assholeness. As fabulous as the food was, if I ate 2 bites of the chopped salad, an eighth of the broiled white fish, and the fondant potato, which I actually thought was a scallop, I would have eaten twice as much as any wife there. Obviously, their caloric intake came strictly from the bubbly wine. The women chatted, and I checked my watch, hoping the twins made it home okay. I mentally reviewed my calendar for the morning, but still giggled when I heard the others laugh. With a grin of thanks, I slid my hand over the top of my glass as one of the caterers tilted the bottle of Cabernet in my direction. If I had more than one glass of wine, I'd fall asleep face first in the flan. After dinner, when I heard enough petty gossip and reached information overload from way too many people I didn't even know, I found Michael lounged with the guys in the wood-paneled cigar room off the front foyer. I knocked on the French door's beveled glass panels to get his attention and wave goodbye. He responded by raising his rock glass with barely a glance. My hand remained flat on the glass as if I could draw him to me. I watched him cajole and gesture with the group of men, wondering how he could appear so friendly and social, yet at home could barely string a whole sentence together. A few men distracted by the ogler in the window pane glanced at me as if I were the one in the fishbowl. Once Michael noticed their distraction and followed their eyes, he said something. All the men broke into laughter. Michael had regained their attention. Mortified at being the butt of a joke, I let myself out the front door. With a shiver, hurt took over my embarrassment. I couldn't get to my car fast enough, wishing I had the smarts to have called in sick to this dinner party. I reached for my St. Sebastian charm beneath the blouse and prayed for him to help Michael get his priorities straight. My house glowed as I turned the corner of the street. Every light in every room was on. Nice to know the girls weren't worried about Michael's wrath any more than mine when it came to saving electricity. I hoped the girls had at least cleaned up from their pre-dance spaghetti dinner and post-dance snacks. I was in no mood to pick up after them. These twins wanted to be treated like adults, yet still be dependent enough for me to be their maid, cook, and secretary. Well, until they could get their dishes to the sink, I'd make sure I was their chauffeur, too. All was quiet as I entered the relatively, I could see they made the attempt, clean kitchen. I'd got myself worked up over nothing this time. I walked around the house, shutting off lights, left the front exterior lights on for Michael, then checked on the girls. Neither looked up when I peeked in, as each was in their bed with their own form of digital entertainment. There you go.
That's great. And that's poignant, and yet your humor comes through as well.
Yeah, there's a little sarcasm, exactly.
Kyle, what does writing success look like to you?
I'm going to say that people like my stories. That's probably the most important. And unfortunately, the only way I know that is by book sales, and reviews. And I'm a proponent. I post, occasionally, a couple times a month about the importance of reviews for authors. I think that is the biggest. It's almost like we have to educate our own audience. And so, like, I did a book fair, the Venice Book Fair this weekend, which was quite successful. I had people searching out my book because they did such wonderful advertising. But I actually made bookmarks about the importance of doing reviews for us, and how after 50 reviews, Amazon could boost us a little and do stuff like that. And I actually gave them to all the authors to pass out to all their readers, because I feel we need to train our audience a little better.
Well, I agree. And I think that readers are intimidated by writing reviews. They think they have to write a novel about our novel. And I'll assure them that that's not the case. They can just write, two or three sentences would mean the world to us.
Yeah, my daughter I told my family, I said, if you'd like to write a review, write a review. I'm not sure if Amazon would post it, because
Yeah.
they kind of have but they posted one from my daughter who enjoyed the book, and she wrote, "Go Mom."
Oh,
And I
well,
thought
that,
that was so sweet that they would have, because I'm not sure how many moms, our kids would put their name out there under their mom's book.
yeah, that's very unusual for that to slip through, I think, for relatives, but that's great.
Yeah, I was very happy that Amazon chose to do that.
Well, as always, our last interview question is our writers over 50 are quite unique. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
I do. And my advice would be, now that we can all think about ourselves a little more, put ourselves first a little more, is to take responsibility for your choices. Life is choices. This is a big part of my life lessons. Like my father would say, you don't have to like it, but you have to go. So if you got to go, you might as well enjoy it. So, and I truly, truly believe in that. So I feel that you have a choice whether to put your butt in the seat or to bake those cookies for your grandkids, or they're all choices. And I'm not saying one's right or what's wrong, but take responsibility. Don't get upset with your friend who published a book if your butt's not in the seat. And I had to learn that lesson because I kept putting my family first, and this came second. And I mean, my books have been ready for a couple of years, but I had to make that choice and take responsibility for not doing that. So that's my advice.
And that's so true. And I think we're encouraged to write every day and to get our books out there because they are legacies for our children and grandchildren. I enjoyed so much that one of my granddaughters chose one of my books to take to class when they were required to read a book. And she told everybody, my grandmother wrote this book. And I was just thrilled with that because she said, not everybody's grandmothers write books.
That's right. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just appreciate your being with us so much today. And we're happy to say that you're now counted among our authors over 50.
And I love it. And congratulations for your awards, too. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's D-A-I-L-Y, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.